Hey, what's up guys, Aarava here, and welcome back to an episode of my F1 2019 career mode, episode number 11 today for the British Grand Prix. If you guys did miss the previous one, the Austrian GP, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. A very good episode for us as a whole, as a team, myself and Kimi Raikkonen. But now we come home to the home GP for myself, so hopefully it can be a great one. Unfortunately, we have one failure on the upgrade side of things. The chassis update has failed, but at least we got one of them, and of course the reliability upgrade, I don't think they ever really fail, so we've got that general wear as well coming into Silverstone. But always was an enjoyable track for me last year, I guess, in a way. I mean, the last corner was always quite tricky with traction versus the AI, so we'll see this year if the Alfa, the understeer, how that goes around practice. But in terms of overall update, I haven't really shown the R&D chart too much, like this graph. I used to quite a lot on last year's game, I feel, in every single episode, but I haven't really shown it that much this year. But this is where we stand then. We're in P5, technically, on paper, behind Renault, just ahead of the likes of Haas and Racing Point. There's quite a close pack there of Alfa, Haas, Racing Point, and McLaren, and then a bit of a further gap to Toro Rosso and Williams. So at the moment, looking pretty good. Obviously, in the actual standings, though, we're ahead of Renault, so that's equally even better. But then there's still a huge gulf to the top three teams, as it would be this year, though. It's not really a championship year, of course. It's kind of more of a building year, solidifying this midfield, and so far it's going well. You can see we've rapidly upgraded ever since the Spanish Grand Prix. That was the real turnaround, was those two major aero updates. That's been the big shift, really, in the upgrading, and that's kind of opened up the tree and allowed us to do all those minor upgrades that have all added up to be quite good upgrades, really. So, yeah, raring to go for the home GP. Hopefully we can qualify well for the grid. So let's get straight into Saturday and see how we do.
It's time once again then for qualifying here at Silverstone on what we're hoping will be a tight contest for pole position. Many of the drivers have commented on the challenge posed by the high-speed direction changes around this circuit, but you still need to be quick in a straight line. Is that a fair layman's appraisal?
Drivers are going to need a nicely balanced car to be fast here. They'll need to get the most out of the medium and high-speed corners, which will push them to run more downforce. But in turn, this slows the car down on the straights. It's a tricky balancing act.
So diving into our first final lap in Q1, then through turn 1, a little bit of a wobble on the rear end as it snaps as we then go into Village, which is pretty stable for us, but definitely the Alfa doesn't have the full downforce to go flat out into turn 1 like I'm sure the top three cars are. But generally speaking, the car feeling pretty good around here. It's obviously a compromise of downforce for the straight line speed. You want a good speed, obviously on the straights, the back straights especially, where all the overtaking will get done, but you need that downforce, just that pure grip in the middle of Maggots, Beckett's turn 1, etc. And through the last corner, felt okay actually. I can't quite tell what the traction will be like compared to the AI. Obviously, as I said, last year was pretty bad for me through the last corner consistently, but lap time is there, and we're matching Kimi, so both together, P7 and 8, once again, like we were in Q3 of Austria, so let's hope it can end all the way into Q3 like that for us as we move now into Q2. No issue anymore. It's getting out of Q1 for us, thankfully. I throw it all the way back to Australia, where it was looking pretty disastrous for us in terms of where the pace was, but obviously the car has come a long way. But now through to the last sector, through Stowe, and the last few corners here, just trying to nail down this Q2 lap to try and get into the top 10 shootout. Then Easy does it on the brakes, really early apex then to try and keep tight to the line, not get too wide, because compromising the last two corners, then run to the line and across it, and we'll be up into P4. Easy does it, and we're going to be just actually about into Q2. So it was P4, it's now down to P10, so we're actually quite lucky there. By the skin of our teeth, we got through into Q3. Raikkonen sets a blistering lap compared to everyone else here, and it's in P4 in Q2, so showing the car might have some pace, but also might just be the fact that other people went slower. But both Renaults are through with Perez and Ricciardo, and Hamilton was the only man who managed to qualify on the medium tyres there in the top 10, so he'll have a bit of an advantage perhaps on the strategy depending on how the tyre wear is around Silverstone. Obviously we don't know, being the very first season on the game, but we'll just have to see how it goes. But we only did one flyer in Q2, so I think we do have two new sets of tyres to use in this Q3 session. But at the moment, this is our first final lap then, seeing how it goes through Maggots and Beckett's. The car feeling somewhat planted the rear and steps out a little bit and floats around, but then we plant the power down on the exit of Beckett's, open DRS, and then through to the last few corners. Massive lock-up, though, into that left-hand, and that compromises the run into the last two corners, and that's probably a good two tenths at least lost there, probably in that one corner. So we're up into P7 then. Eventually, it's actually going to remain P7 to my surprise, because Kimi has had a horrendous first run in P10 there, so he's going to have to have a much better run in that second flyer, and so we go on to that second flyer as well. At the very end of the session there, you saw there was 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, which I thought was going to be enough time. Apparently not. So again, kind of like what happened at Spain, For some reason, I thought there'd be enough time, but I guess, I don't know, the simulation of exiting the pit lane was so slow, and so I don't get a second run. Raikkonen does, and so we're down to P10 in the end of it, and Raikkonen gets up to P7. So I think there was pace in the car to match what we did at Austria and do a 7-8 ahead of the two Renaults, but alas, just again, a little bit of a mishap there, like what happened at Spain. We mistimed that, and so we don't get to have another run. So it's the two Ferraris that lock it out, and we literally, again, it's like Austria. We could have had a 2x2 Noah's Ark in the top 10, but I ruined it all. So that's my fault there. So we have to go into the race there knowing we can make up a few places probably though on the Renaults and try and catch back up to Raikkonen and try and match his pace and maybe have another copycat of Austria in terms of the positions. That might be asking a bit too much because a lot happened in Austria, but you never know. So let's just go into Sunday and see how things pan out.
We're right back where it all began. The very first World Championship Grand Prix was held here at Silverstone in 1950, with Giuseppe Farina taking the top step of an all-Alfa Romeo podium. He earned 9 championship points that day on his way to the inaugural title. His winning total at the season's end, just 30 points. My, how times have changed. So let's see who can reach the top step of the modern podium today. With good opportunities to overtake at the end of the Wellington and Hangar Straights, there's a lot of potential for close action around the 3.6 miles of the Silverstone circuit. With 18 corners and average lap speeds of around 145 miles per hour, it's also one of the longest and quickest circuits on the calendar. Alongside me once again for coverage of today's race, it's none other than the great Anthony Davidson. Let's start with the new Alfa Romeo driver. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Sebastian Vettel has a clear track ahead of him today. He starts in pole position, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Hamilton, Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, and Raikkonen, Ricciardo, the engineer, Norris, and Nico Hülkenberg. Leclerc, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Magnussen, Romain Grosjean, and Perez. Weber, Sainz, George Russell and Alexander Albon, Stroll and Devon Butler starts from the back of the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
So we're going to be starting in P8 thanks to some grid penalties. Leclerc being the biggest hitter there, having to go down all the way to P11 there, so jumping up 2 positions. So in the end, ironically, I actually start where I wanted to try and aim for, which was matching the Austria qualifying. So it's going to be a one-stop, it looks like, from the soft to medium tyre. So actually, in hindsight, then Hamilton's little qualifying on mediums in Q2 probably won't mean much because the tyre was actually quite low, surprisingly. I thought it would be quite a lot higher, but that's just the way it's panned out. So yeah, we're going to go for that first one because they're both one-stops, but one's using the hard tyres, one's using the mediums. I don't really know why you'd go onto hard tyres unless your car was really quite harsh on tyre wear, but although our car's not been the best, I think we should be able to stick with everyone on the soft to medium strategy. It's just going to be all overcast, no rain apparently, but you never know. It is Silverstone, it is Britain, and the game sometimes can lie to us on the weather indicator, so we'll have to see if there is going to be any sprinkling showers in the race. But fill up on fuel, of course, and get ready from P8. Could be a pretty good race actually for us at the home Grand Prix. So let's just get into this then as we go to 5 red lights to the British Grand Prix here at Silverstone. 26 laps ahead of us here, just about halfway through the season done. 4 red lights are out and we're underway. Bit of a slow start for us and Raikkonen as Ricciardo is able to try and jostle for position on the outside of Kimi. We have to go defensive somewhat to Norris, who has a little look on our outside as well, but we're up into P8 then, and we're going to try and get down the inside into Village of Ricciardo and see if we can get that P7 position. Our lucky number P7, we're on the outside though for the next left-hander, so might get squeezed out, but as we go through on the exit, we get a team radio.
You're pushing too hard. It's causing your gearbox to take increased wear.
So apparently we've got gearbox wear issues, and now I'm getting deja vu from the Spanish Grand Prix. We flick through the heads-up display menu on the bottom right, and yet our gearbox is severely worn. What on earth has gone there? Why has my team told me about this gearbox wear before we went into this weekend? Why was I not told we should probably change that? Also, I don't even know how we got into Q3 then with a 97% worn gearbox. How was there no performance deficit with the gear changes or any kind of gear jam, but now we have a situation here of can I even make it to the end of this Grand Prix? 26 laps gone. I mean, our gearbox was having major jamming issues a lot earlier in the wear cycle at the Spanish Grand Prix, and right now we're at 97%, and we're only on lap 1 of 26. This is going to be a major grind. Already can see now I'm trying to upshift a little bit earlier, trying to just be a little kinder to the gearbox, basically, because I can't afford to rev it anymore. Otherwise, it will just blow up within like 2-3 laps. So, yeah, I don't know what the situation is. This is, of course, the second gearbox we took, so we took it earlier because we had to take it at Monaco. So we're out of sync of the usual cycle of things, but I just didn't even ever think to look at the gearbox and how it was looking on the main menus before we went into the race weekend, and now we've got another team radio.
We're showing a gearbox jam. You're going to be stuck in gear for a while. We're working on it the best we can.
And now we are absolutely screwed. My car is now stuck in 6th gear. This is not what you want on lap number 2 of your home Grand Prix, but it's happened. Leclerc's already overtaken us anyway, as I was talking before, because I had to go a lot slower anyway in the downshift phases, and he just waltzed around the outside of us. But this is very bad now. So you can see the acceleration's not great, and then even when we get to 6th gear, then I can't change up, so it's just stuck here, and this in turn is probably ruining the gearbox even more because it's revving the hell out of 6th gear. So I should probably just trundle around and stick to low revs with 6th gear, but I want to continue to push on. But the amount of understeer we're now getting going through a 3rd or 4th gear corner in 6th gear is ridiculous. We're down to P11 now, and things are just going from bad to worse to a disaster soon enough. Down to P12, Magnussen gets us, Sergio Perez down our inside in the Renault, and oh my god, the old turn 1, horrendous there. No sense of downforce. That the Williams car just waltzed past us like it's a Mercedes car. Russell's just done me like he's Lewis Hamilton, and we're down to P16. Things aren't looking good, and also now I've lost some grip on the exit curb. We're on the grass, and we're now down officially to last place, and our gearbox is still jammed. I'm still stuck in 6th gear. So this is going to be a different kind of episode. I don't know how on earth we're going to tackle this. First and foremost, I'm going to need my gearbox to get unjammed out of 6th gear, and then we'll see. Right now, the gearbox is still worn, I think 97% there, so it hasn't gone up any out of the percentile, so at least that's good. Despite us being stuck in 6th gear, it hasn't worn the gearbox anymore, so we're still on 97%, but 97% is still very worrying, you know, if you take into account the fact I have to still go 23 laps in this Grand Prix. So now our gearbox has come back, actually, you can see in the bottom right, so we can actually change down and change up normally. So now it begins, well, what begins is a very long slog of attempting to try and recover in this Grand Prix whilst upshifting and downshifting a lot earlier. I'm going to have to really cut my revs, and pretty much as soon as the rev counter gets to the start of the lights on my dashboard, just going to have to change up straight away. And when we start changing down, I'm going to have to just brake and kind of wait a few seconds and then start changing down to try and let the revs go lower to try and, in order to save the gearbox, essentially. But that's going to slow us down for sure, and it's definitely going to have to be a different style of driving, a very much kind of rolling the car through, letting the momentum kind of slow me down, the aero slowing me down in a way, so I don't even know if a recovery is possible, but I guess we'll just see now. And as we go through from laps 3 to 4, we are catching the train, tail-ended by Devin Butler in the Toro Rosso, and we're going to have DRS here, so let's try and see if we can make some overtakes. But of course, even whilst overtaking, I need to make sure I don't forget about changing down a little bit later in the brake phase and changing up quicker. So all the time I'm going to have to concentrate on that whilst also, you know, wanting to eagerly make some moves. So here we go, down inside of Butler, but there you see he had to kind of glide in 5th gear and just be a little bit slower on the pass and shutting the door a lot later than I usually would. But we made the pass at least, so we've made one overtake with a gearbox issue that we're nursing, so at least we know there's maybe some potential to maybe get up into, I don't know, maybe P15 or something like that. I'm trying to remain positive here, but Butler comes back at us because, of course, our exit speed is so much worse now at every corner, and so he has to look through the last corner. But as we go through now onto lap 6, so 2 laps later, and we're catching up to Albon now, who's the car ahead of us. So the Toro Rosso seems to be the slowest car so far at Silverstone. So we're going to dive bomb down the inside of Albon again, though, nice and easy on the gearing, over the bump, really squeeze Albon out and try and get that, but he comes back at us because, of course, we're going slower through every single entry, and he comes through. He's on the inside, he's got his nose there, so we have to leave him the room. Still changing up early, open DRS, go a little bit wide, hopefully the DRS can carry us through. No, it doesn't. The Toro Rossos now attack us. We're 3 wide with the Toro Rossos. They're going to pinch me a little bit into the next left-hander. It's so close. Lovely little camera shot there as we look back behind us, and we get through though into Luffield eventually up into P18, and we will try and catch Lando Norris then on this same lap through Magnussen Beckett's. Norris goes for the move on Lance Stroll, so can we catch Stroll napping? Maybe, potentially. Those two have a real tussle. They're still side by side. Stroll squeezes Norris out and he gets unsettled, and so we're able to try and catch him down the inside into the chicane with an unsettled car. We're up into P17 then, and on the exit though, can we try and gain on Stroll? Will we have to defend too much against Norris? Let's have a look here. Hot lap mode engaged. We move to the inside to try and cut the slipstream back to racing line though, and we remain in P17. And through the first corner, wow, Stroll has such a lack of downforce there, even with me going easy into turn 1, and so we can send it to the inside. Big lockup, but no contact made with Lance Stroll on the left. That was actually really nice move there. It was so fine on our left front tyre to his right front, but we made it stick. No contact there made. FI message for the stewards, and so we're up into P16. So things are actually looking a lot better. To say we remember have 97% gearbox wear, to say that, I think it's going pretty swimmingly well actually. And so we to move on to lap number 8, catching up to Carlos Sainz in Magda Beckett's. He's actually stuck behind George Russell in the Williams, so our fellow Brit, his home Grand Prix as well, doing a great job at dragging up the Williams car, doing his best impression of Lucas Weber in there. Obviously Weber is even further up the road in the Williams, but here we go now, down the back straight, DRS open. Sainz will not pull in to make a move on Russell, so we'll go for the move down the inside of 2 cars there. Russell comes in, turns into the apex like I'm not there, and hits my side pod there, so I don't know what on earth he was playing at, but we're up into P14 then. We just did a double dive, whilst also, again, I'll reiterate, protecting our gearbox, so it's actually really good at the moment. P14, dare I say it, could we get some points, maybe? I mean, if the gearbox holds out, that's another question entirely, because obviously I can do all the work in the world to, you know, change up early, change down early, but the gearbox is still going to wear. But now on lap number 9, the thing I need to worry about is my tyres, that they're very worn indeed there. So despite it being a one-stop, apparently, the tyre wear very horrendous on those soft tyres. Maybe just, of course, I had a few issues at the very start of the race that wouldn't have helped the tyre compound for sure. But now we're into this very slow pit lane entry at Silverstone. We strap on the set of medium tyres. To be honest, at this stage, I'll say this has been a pretty successful British Grand Prix with the gearbox issue, because I didn't think we were going to even make this. As soon as the radio came in the first time on lap number 1 to say we had gearbox wear, I thought we wouldn't even make the pit stop. So at least we've made the pit stop, we've come through, our team has seen our car, and so we can go out again and see what we can do. But of course, like I said, the gearbox will still be wearing a little bit, even though I'm trying to nurse it. So the thing is, if it gets to like 99%, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to fail unless we're on lap 25 or 26, and then we can maybe just about make it to the end of the Grand Prix, but we have a long way to go. Lap 11, still not even halfway done through this Grand Prix. So here we come now through the last corner. Some people finally in the pit lanes will make some places up. We've been trundling around in last place. We go through turn 1 now, and we'll gain 1, 2, 3 positions there, and back into P17, but with a massive amount of oversteer and wobble as I try and maintain the higher gears. But Lucas Weber ahead of us, we haven't seen him this entire Grand Prix since he overtook us, so that's quite positive actually that we're gaining up to Weber, because we passed his teammate of course, and we're ahead still by a long way of Carlos Sainz. So actually some pretty okay pace here, and so can we try and catch the second Williams of the afternoon? Still very gloomy, very much my mood in the cockpit per se, but oh no, as we go through onto lap 13. Oh, come on, that's it. That's it. The gearbox gave out on lap 13. That's our race over. It was a noble effort. 13 laps with a 97% to 99% worn gearbox. But through the last corner, the gearbox just goes snap. And that is it. We're out of our home Grand Prix. And I really hope that's not the start of some bad luck and bad juju at the British GP. Kind of like Jenson Button. I think never being on the podium was he ever, Jenson was, at Silverstone. And I hope that's not going to be the same for us. But that's not a great way to have our very first home Grand Prix on the 2019 game. But that's how it's panned out. And that's the end of our race then.
Here's our winner, pulling their Ferrari into Parc Fermé. What a fantastic race it was. Anthony Davidson, what helped them deliver this result, do you think?
I'd say it was down once again to good consistent driving, nailing the corners, working to the track conditions and perfecting the team's strategies. They got all of these things right today and the results speak for themselves.
Looking at the podium, you can see that red suit familiar to fans across the globe. A world-class win for a world-class team. Ferrari do it again.
So obviously a bit of a British Grand Prix to forget for myself. Raikkonen does get up into P7 and finish there, so that's a pretty solid race for him. Sebastian Vettel wins it then from Hamilton to Bottas, so a stronger race for Mercedes really, with Leclerc obviously having to come back from P11, so he's actually done well to recover from that penalty he had at the start on the grid. Gasly P4, Verstappen with a bit of a poor race down in P6, and of course Raikkonen, like I said, the two Renaults, then Ricciardo and Perez finish strong, and then you've got the Racing Point car of Hulkenberg. So both the swappies, Perez and Hulkenberg, doing pretty well there in that Grand Prix. And then it's a pretty lofty position for Williams, to be fair to them. I mean, GG's 13th place and 14th for George Russell and Lucas Weber respectively there. Good stuff for them. But of course, for us then, with the DNF there, that means that Raikkonen closes up quite a fair bit to us in the Drivers' Championship. So we're together there in P8 and 9 the championship, but Raikkonen now, you know, he has one more good race and beats us again, and he could overtake us in the championship then. So kind of coming back and showing, obviously, he's not lost the pedigree of a former world champion, but of course we couldn't do much about that today. That's kind of out of our hands with the gearbox issue, but obviously I should have looked at the menu, but I just didn't think to look at it, because we changed it at Monaco, and I thought, okay, shouldn't have any issues now. Like I said, we had no actual performance issues in qualifying, so I had no inkling our gearbox was even that worn. I had no team radio whatsoever throughout the entirety of qualifying saying, my gearbox is worn, you should probably look into it, because otherwise I probably would have done the gearbox change going into the race, would have just happily taken a 5-place grid penalty and then started what would have been, well actually, because considering we started P8 then, it would have been only starting like P13, which would only have been 3 places back from where we qualified, so it really wouldn't have been that bad, but I had no indication of it, so I just didn't bother to look at the menu before the race. So note to self, now I'll be looking at that pretty much every single race just to double check that. But yeah, sometimes those things happen. It is F1, it's a long season, and so you have these ups and downs, and so we move on. So we go through now to the R&D, and funny enough, do you want to know what upgrade I purchased? Yeah, that's right, I purchased the gearbox reliability upgrade, because yeah, I don't want a repeat of that anytime soon. So for the first time we do a gearbox upgrade for the reliability, and of course we had to repurchase that chassis upgrade that failed our car. But nonetheless, an entertaining episode, I guess you could say. But if you did enjoy that, be sure to hit that like button. Let me know your thought in the comments below. If you are new around here, subscribe for weekly full-on content. I've been aarava. Home today. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.